Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Equal Pay panel discussion hosted by Gradar, the job evaluation and compensation platform. Why are we here today? Well, it's clear to see that pay transparency has become a HR hot topic across the globe, and we want to talk about it. Whether it's through mandatory pay ranges in US job listings, gender pay gap reporting in the UK, or most recently, the EU Pay Directive, fair pay isn't just a suggestion, it's a requirement. With sweeping changes expected, it's no wonder that some companies are scrambling to keep up with new rules, as well as shifting employee expectations. Today, we've got some of the brightest minds in the compensation space, and we've got Philip here as well to discuss the new legislation, pay transparency, and equal pay in general. My name's James Mackay, Managing Director of Gradar UK, and I'm joined by Bentje Grunewald, Head of Compensation at DKV Mobility, Anna Figueroa, Director of Organisation and Compensation at Esperta, Juana Botelan, Managing Partner at C-Team Human Capital, and of course, Philip Schuch, Founder and CEO of Gradar. Welcome, everyone. Hopefully this can be a relaxed, engaging discussion, so feel free to jump in at any time with comments or thoughts you'd like to share. Phil, I think you'd be happy to kick us off, so I'm asking quite simply, how would you define the concept of equal pay, and why is it so important in today's society?
Okay, so I should have read the questions in advance. Okay, I get it now. Yeah. So there's two approaches to this, I guess, and they are sometimes being confused. So for once, there's equal pay, which means employees would be paid equally for the same labor they deliver or for the same job, or for a job of equal value to the organization. And then there's the thing about pay gaps. And the discussion today is mostly about gender pay gaps. And this is what the new EU Pay Directive or Pay Transparency Directive is all about. It's all about the gender pay gap. But it could also be another so-called protected category, like a race-based gender pay gap or an age-based gender pay gap. But the things, so the gender pay gap and equal pay, they are not necessarily the same.
Useful to know. Bentje?
There's not a lot to add, I believe. It's ages that women are fighting for equal rights, and I think it would be very interesting, Philip, what you have mentioned to see what maybe an age pay gap would be, because actually then first we would have a discussion, what is a fair pay at a higher or younger age, because I think that's also always something we need to bear in mind. What's a good factor that explains maybe a gender pay gap? So is it actually fair that older people many times earn more than younger people? And what is a fair pay? I think for equal pay, it's mainly clear. Men and women in the same job should be treated equally, but then what is the same job? And there are also like different shades of blue and red. So like in a grade 12, you have like your entry levels and your close to grade 13 people. So we have many in-betweens and many individuals at the end that need to be taken into account with their needs, their input, their professional background, and we cannot put everything of this into a statistic, an Excel sheet, or a gradar, a gender pay gap analysis, and like the gender pay gap will pop out. So it can just give us maybe a hint. Okay, in grade 12, you have an issue, you should look at this in detail. But then when you look at the people, and we're not that big organization, so we still know our employees, or at least the business partner do, then probably with every person, they can tell me a story. And some of them are really, we have an issue and we should get them where the others are. And sometimes it's also, well, argumentable that people earn less due to many reasons.
Anna, is that something you'd agree with?
Yes, and I think it's beyond the pay gap and the salary, that it's an issue. I think it's about managing diversity. It's not only gender, it's nationality, it's age, as Bente was talking about. There are many variables and many factors that should be addressed with equality. And I think also that salary is a result of something tangible that you have, that you see after many things. And there are many things also to be addressed regarding gender equality. And I read recently an article about selection recruitment, and it used to say, it said female tend to go as a candidate only when they feel that they fulfill the 100 or the 90% of the requirements of the job. And that's something that is invisible but happens too. So imagine how many things we should be doing to work on this and to work on equality. It's also working on differences and then treating everything with equality, salary, and of course any policy, any people policy, development and learning and whatever. So now that so tangible thing is salary, and it's something that makes people scream. So it's a good starting point. Very good.
Anna, anything to add?
Oh my God, how much time have you got?
Yeah.
No, but really, when you talk about equal pay, I mean, look at us. We are, we are 3-4 people talking about the topic, and we know that we have to keep it brief. And still, we have so much to talk about when we just say equal pay. Because again, as Philip was saying, we talk about equal pay in terms of type of job, level of job, same job, or we talk or we talk about equal pay in terms of gender, race, and the list can be very long. I think the answer is that equal pay, as we clearly see from the legal changes, is a reality. And I think the first step that we do take is, as you were saying before, just a minute ago, just to look at the analysis, just to look at the graph that gradar is popping out in front of you, and from there take it from there, because from there there's a world to explore. Then I think after you look at the graph, that's when the really hard part begins, because then you have to see and to take smart, informed decisions about what to do, how to address, what to address, if to address, and so on. So I think, and I would love to also mention before you take away my, you put me on mute. It's the fact that we are working with multinational companies in Eastern Europe, so they are part of the group. They follow the same approach, the same comp and ben policies. But the fun part from where we stand is the fact that we are coming from an area where large state organizations did have all these salary grids, which were placed in the collective labor agreement very openly, very publicly for all the employees in the organization. So transparency was there, equal pay was there, because you had. And the fun part is, when you look at these, the fact that you had, imagine, 35 steps and 65 levels. So it made no sense whatsoever. Nobody could, it was logical, it was coherent, it was equal. But on the other hand, it was so complicated. So now it's a scary concept. When you talk about equal pay, it's a scary concept around here. So that's where we're coming from.
Well, I'm not going to mute you because I want to stick with you for this next question, because really, and we've kind of seen from this initial discussion, is that there is so much to say about equal pay, gender pay gaps, and more. And it's kind of quite hard to cut through the noise. So do you think there are any common misconceptions or myths about equal pay that you think need to be addressed?
Well, yes, the short version. The long version.
Yeah, please explain.
Oh, come on, I answered. Why?
Yeah.
But the point is that, of course, we all know that, generally speaking, we're talking about a pay gap, a gender pay gap on certain levels. And I've been studying personally this gender pay gap because Romania is a country where the gender pay gap is not so big. I mean, in all the comparisons, in all the statistics, Romania is doing very well in terms of gender pay gaps compared to some other Western countries, compared to the US. I'm not even talking. So, but nevertheless, one of the myths I've been happy to demythicize is the fact that women have lower salaries on all levels. And for example, for mid-management levels, we have equal, if not higher, salary levels, and more women in mid-management positions. Of course, in top management, it's not the same discussion, but nonetheless, we're getting there. But of course, the myths are related, the most common ones I've met are related to gender pay gaps and to age pay gaps. But of course, it's very hard to isolate the age pay gap strictly what is related to age and what is related to tenure, what is related to performance, long-term performance, and so on and so forth, and some other changes in the structure. We have included this bonus in the salary 5 years ago, and so on. So basically, there are a lot of myths, and the general, but what I find really important is to keep talking about it as much as it seems it's all said and done. And you know why? Because I'm still meeting a lot of top managers who are saying, no, of course not. There is no gender pay gap in our, I mean, what? We pay the same, we have the same salary grid. I mean, and you talk to a lot of decision makers, and unless they get the graph from Philip or some hard data, with all true, in all honesty, they don't realize that there is, in most cases, some serious pay gaps.
Bill, I saw you nodding along there. Agree? You're on mute.
Okay, so
you on mute usually.
So there's another. Well, it's not exactly a myth, but it's something that some organizations are trying to look into. And we are working in a globalized economy. There are many multinational firms. And in the Americas, it is quite common to also look into a race-based gender pay gap, especially for those firms that are already quite evolved when it comes to DEI reporting, for example. But when you take the concept of race-based pay to Europe, you're quite certain to find trouble, because most organizations would not collect this type of information, and it's in several countries it's frowned upon. So you can't always use the same approach to pay gap reporting and analysis in every country, and it needs to be a very local thing. And that's what I love about this panel today. So we have the perspective from Spain, we have the perspective from Germany, and we have the perspective from Romania. 3 very different economies. And what Oana is saying about middle management jobs, often being held by women and with competitive pay. That's quite interesting. And this is not something that I can confirm for many organizations that we have worked with in Germany or in Western parts of Europe. So it has a local component, and I think this is very important to keep in mind. And this is actually going to be part of the EU Pay Transparency Directive, because this one needs to be turned into local law. And every country will add something. They can't really take anything away from that directive, but they will add something and maybe make it more complicated or more granular, like we've seen in Spain, with the need to report on allowances too, not just on annual pay. And definitely for Germany, I think we can say that pay gap reporting is going to be much, much more challenging than it is today, because there's nothing really happening in Germany as of today.
I think you've teed us up quite nicely. I'd like to come to Anna and Benji now, just talking about differences in different locations and cultural attitudes and organizational practices in each country. Anna, being based in Spain, how do you think we can start shifting those cultural attitudes and the practices within organizations to put more of a priority on equal pay and fairness?
I think that, and regarding your question regarding myths, the previous one, I think in Spain happened something funny, because the myth was that, we are there with the gender gap pay, but no, we pay very equally, and we do things right, and that was the old Spain, and now we are Europeans. And as Philip said, Spanish regulations were very, very, very strict, and they asked for a lot of information. And I think that asking for that lot of information was because the myth was that no, Spain was not European yet. Spain was, there was a gender pay gap yet. That's why they were so strict with the regulations. That I hope that make something more easy to control gender pay gap in the future. But anyway, it was a shock treatment, okay? And maybe in Spain it was needed. And in Spain, once we've seen that, okay, there's gender pay gap, but in our clients, for example, and I've been doing analysis in many clients, it's not a general thing, that gender pay gap, and usually is due to that's occurring on specific situations. So what happens now in Spain is that once they have started analyzing everything in a very strict way, just to detect gender pay gap, they are realizing that they don't have equality, and the problem is not so big regarding gender. It's about job architecture, and it's about equality in all the policies. And then now what is funny in Spain, because in Germany, I think that it's you've been evaluating jobs for many years. In Spain, some companies, of course, but not so much, and not so many. In Spain now, they are discovering job evaluation, and not only small companies. And they weren't using job evaluation, and they have a gender pay gap. Well, they may have in some levels, okay, but the problem is, well, the good thing is that they realized that they needed this. They needed job evaluation, and they needed order. And when the CEO sees that he has an Excel sheet with all the jobs, another one with all the people, and that they can have an structure, and then manage exceptions, of course. And there could be exceptions regarding salary, because that position in the market, there's a lack of talent and somebody has, and you have to pay for that, okay. But when they see job evaluation, a map of jobs, an order that you can build salary bands, they see why they needed job evaluation, and they see that they weren't paying equally regarding gender or regarding whatever, because there are multiple factors. So I think that in Spain, this shock treatment was very good for this, for putting order in things. And I think that the myth was that we had a lot of order, and they saw that they didn't have order, they didn't have tools, they didn't have processes, they didn't have anything.
The key word that I want to touch on there is order. And Bente, I'd love to get the German perspective, because Phil's always talking about bringing order to chaos. And do you kind of see that job evaluation exercise and building the job architecture as a way that you can kind of shift that organizational practice to prioritize equal pay?
Yeah, good question. I think it really depends where you start. I've seen some practitioners or heard some practitioners' speeches from big global organizations, and they have 10 people just taking care about diversity and inclusion and 5 people taking care just about equal pay. And they have been doing job evaluation for ages. So they're very advanced. That exists, but in other organizations there's just titles, and then you're senior marketing manager because you organize the Christmas party, and of course that's super important for everyone that the Christmas party is well organized, but probably it's not the highest graded job in the organization. So it really depends on your starting point, and in Germany, I mean, it's global statistics, we can look at the pay gap across the European Union, and we still have a quite high pay gap in general in Germany. We also have some nice laws that promote women taking parental leave, also fathers taking parental leave, but from my biased observation, it's mainly men or female or women who take parental leave, and men just take 1 month or 2 months, and then they say, wow, look at me, I also took parental leave. Yeah, of course, every family is free to manage their family life as they regard it helpful for them. But still, I hear women who come back after a relatively short break, saying that they're prejudged. And so we still have this in our national blood, or I don't know how you want to call it, that maybe it's more common that a woman don't work in high graded jobs or leadership positions. Also what Anna mentioned, it's not that much about pay. So the few women I see in high job grades, they paid fairly, they get a good salary because there are not many women that you can hire in those grades, but we see more women in lower grades, and that's not a secret, and that's not only in my organization. That's if you look at any public listed organization, at any diversity report, everybody has targets for women in management, and that's because they have too less. So we still have a way to go.
And that's why we introduced this glass ceiling analysis in gradar, and this is something that we see in almost every organization. Women stop holding jobs at a certain grade. This could be grade 12 jobs, grade 13 jobs, and then there's the glass ceiling. So from the bottom, you can look up, and the woman can see it, and they can see the jobs above the ceiling. But for some reason, there's no way to climb the ladder and get into these jobs. And that's not about equal pay. That's about equal opportunities then. And I think that's actually a challenge in many organizations, because if there's no equal opportunities, so if the job holders are not distributed equally in higher grades and lower grades, if clerks are predominantly women and the engineers are men, and there's a great difference of 6 grades or something, then your gender pay gap is always going to be quite large, even though the organization is working at equal pay for everyone. The gender pay gap is going to be large. And that's why it's important, and that's where the EU Pay Transparency Directive is kind of jumping short. They are asking, well, about the unadjusted gender pay gap. And then they are saying, hey, if there's no explanation, but they don't really say what kind of explanation is needed, and we call it a adjusted gender pay gap based on grade and median or average, for example, then this cannot really be explained.
Hold that thought then, Phil, because I'm just going to run through specifically some of the points of the pay gap directive, and then I'll come back to you for your thoughts. So here are just some of the requirements of the new legislation. So obligatory objective measuring. So employers will need to have an objective method of comparing the value of work. This can include criteria such as educational requirements and responsibility. Pay transparency for job seekers. Employers will have to provide information about initial pay or pay range, either in job posting or before interviews. Right to information. Employees will have the right to request information from their employer about their pay level broken down by sex. Employers must also be able to provide workers a description of the gender neutral criteria used to define their pay levels, and pay progression. Public pay reporting. Employers will be required to publish information on their pay gap between female and male workers based not only on base pay, but also on complementary and variable pay, like bonuses. And justice for victims of pay discrimination. So victims of gender pay discrimination can receive compensation, including back pay and bonuses. Crucially, in an equal pay claim, the burden of responsibility will fall on the employer, not the employee, to prove there wasn't any pay discrimination. So to go back to you, Phil, you said maybe there were elements that were falling short. What's your view on the directive, and overall, do you think it's going to have a positive impact?
So my main concern is that the directive isn't very clear on a couple of things, and that it will be maybe watered down once it's being turned into national law. The way I read the directive, it says, okay, an organization with at least 100 employees needs job evaluation, and it needs analytical job evaluation, not some kind of slotting exercise. Then it needs a proper gender pay gap analysis. So there we're talking about the unadjusted gender pay gap, which may be fairly large if there's no equal opportunity in the organization. But then also it's about the justification of the pay gap by objective factors. And one objective factor is the grade of a job that the employees are holding. Another one could be performance, which is much, much more difficult to measure, or something else maybe, or job family, for example. And this is something that is complex, and it requires something like a regression analysis. And that's not something that your average HR person will do in Excel. This is something where in the past, well, a lot of very expensive expertise was needed for, from our friends at the very large American consultancies, but which is today also available through boutique consultancies across Europe, with the help of Gradar, for example. And this is really then something, I mean, if your unadjusted gender pay gap is 20%, but your adjusted gender pay gap is 3 or 4%, then not everything is perfect, clearly, but it's not as critical as someone might make you think. Because you're actually doing something right. And then once you start professionalizing managing pay with pay bands, with maybe taking part in surveys, with an annual salary review, then it is quite certain, and we see this from an anecdotal evidence a lot, that any kind of pay gap is going to get smaller over time. You won't fix this overnight, but within a couple of years, everything will be will be looking much, much better.
Juana, I saw you had something to add.
Yeah, I was listening and I fully agree with everything, except I'm wondering out loud, isn't it better that, or good enough that the EU regulation is vague, as you say, Philip, because the local reality, not the local legislation. You're right, maybe the local legislation will be also vague. But on the other hand, in the labor market, don't you think that any kind of vague, unclear, whatever legislation will just lead to a natural equilibrium, because we are talking about employees which will ask for stuff because they read in the newspaper, because they heard on TV, because they read the vague legislation they heard from a friend, it doesn't matter. And the employers will be forced in a very short period of time to join the dance and to become champions in transparency in order to attract more people, or in order to keep their people, and so on and so forth. I mean, I think it's a market that is sort of self-regulating based on the trends. And even if the law is not, you must have job grading, you must do the best way to do it would be through an adjusted pay gap analysis, regression, and so on. It will regulate in you can't live without it, basically.
Anna?
Yes, I think that regarding this one, there's this order with legislation. There's this self-order that will come from people asking for things. And I think that there's a midpoint there that we should help, and it's managers and it's pedagogy. Because people, I will ask my bosses, I want gender pay gap. No, sorry, I want gender equality. But and HR teams will do job evaluation, define policies, define bands, but then what we have to do, and it's what we insist a lot also in Spain with our clients, is that you need a tool, you need a process, and then you need pedagogy to start talking to your managers, to give them the tools to do their job, to give them the training and the knowledge, because managers are the ones who have to manage salaries. So, and they are very, very, very scared too.
Absolutely. Fully agree with you. That's the place to start. That's the place where we need competency. We need managers who know how to talk about compensation and benefits, and to explain and to sell and to answer and to, as good as any HR specialist, comp and ben specialist, and so on, because they have to. They are the first line of dialogue. Let's put it like this. And I strongly believe that. Even if there will be, because I see resistance, as I was saying at the beginning, I see a lot of resistance, not only from business decision makers, but also from HR, who are afraid of the transparency step. Oh my God, I'm going to have an internal revolution. How am I going to deal with it? How am I going to explain? And the thing is that you can't live with it anymore, because candidates, I'm sure that, I don't know how it is in Spain or in Germany, but we have candidates who will tell us, okay, in the spoiled industries, let's say, where there is a gap in people, in candidates. So, they are hunted, let's say. So, but they will say, okay, what kind of budgets are we talking about? And then we talk about coming to an interview. Give me the budget first. I need to know if I'm in the right range, if the job is in the right range for me. And, some managers, some hiring managers are still saying, oh my God, but this is rude. First, he has to show to me what he's got, and then I will tell him how much. No, it's the other way around. So you know, it's a slow process, but I think it's faster than we thought a couple of years ago. So I
think it's chaos with different elements, and there are different fronts that are leading to an order, and finally we will get to that, because that happens also in Spain. That happens also in Spain, and they expect people also to say, oh, first he or she has to come to the interview and demonstrate. But it will go there, and linking this to another thing that I think has to do, but not that much. But I wanted to tell you regarding salary and salary studies surveys. In Spain, for example, I don't know if I told you, Philip, there's a company that they are starting using artificial intelligence to get salary market information. Okay, and instead of making the typical salary survey that you all know, they go to the internet, they catch all the information, and then they do the analysis and processes and whatever, and they give you also salary market information. What do I mean with this? That if on the other, as an added value of this transparency, is that if companies have to publish salaries or salary bands, and then the offers have to have this salary range, and there are these companies, everything will be much more democratic. I don't know, much more transparent, because all the information will be there, and that will be good too.
Absolutely, that's our friends over at Talent Up.io, who do this. Yeah, but you're right, and this is all about the business model of the established survey vendors. Right now, they collect data from the firms or from the companies and organizations through HR professionals, and it's a very cumbersome and a complex and kind of lengthy process. But in the future, with AI, with a good data model, you're probably going to get very precise or quite precise information just by, scraping the web and collecting data from different sources. And that's super exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it still doesn't replace your in-house job architecture, but
no, but there's a but, and that's the human factor to me, because it's true. Probably, like, you can ask ChatGPT, what's the job grade? I tried that. It's pretty vague, the answer yet, but I only have the free version. Maybe the new version is already better, and probably we will get there, that you give 5 to 7 bullet points, and then also tools of the well-known providers will give you a job grade. But what will happen then is people will learn how to manipulate this, and this does not I mean, you still need a performance dialogue. I mean, I can write myself a job description, grade 17, 18, hey grade, hey points, whatever you want. But there needs to be somebody who says, okay, Benche, but you are not fulfilling these job requirements. If you want to be grade 21, then that's the requirements. You are not there yet. I mean, you're a good performer in your grade, whatever, 15, you name it. But you are not a grade 21, because it's very easy. Everybody, and that's also a healthy psychological mechanism, hopefully has a high self-esteem, because otherwise we would all be depressive. But sometimes I read job descriptions and I say, okay, they understood it. They really want to get a high job grade, because they know then they have more freedom and compensation. And yeah, they got it. But then it's my job to say, yeah, well, but it's still a sales rep, right? I mean, you put in here many fancy words, and it's still a sales rep. And then also it's about your organization. And then you need to say, okay, how many high grade jobs can we have? How many subject matter experts can we have? Okay, can HR have 15 subject matter experts? Because then, like, pension becomes a subdiscipline. To have an argument to have a new subject matter expert in a high job grade. how many managing roles do you need? So what's the leadership span? So we have super flat hierarchies and everybody's a manager and everybody manages 2 people. Doesn't make sense. And then it's and compensation and grading at the end is about telling your employee, I appreciate you, I see your efforts, I know you're going the extra mile, and still, unfortunately, you don't meet the requirements to the next job grade, or you even meet the requirements, but the CEO job is taken. And as long as the person doesn't leave, we don't have a seat for you. I'm so sorry. And that's always, I don't imagine ChatGPT doing this for me. And that's what I do the whole day. Like I tell managers, yeah, you have a department of 15 people. You already have 5 high drop grades. You can't have another one. If you want to have another one, you need to replace somebody because, okay, you talk about functional leadership, but you already have 3 functional leaders. And that's not going to be replaced.
And that's the unique perspective of a head of compensation within a company, which is so valuable for us to have. We could talk about this all day, and I know we could go on for hours, but I'm conscious we've still got some questions from LinkedIn followers to get to. So before we move on to that, I just want to come to each of you individually and ask, what do you want to see change over the next few years when it comes to equal pay? What do you want to see change, and how do you think individuals, communities, institutions, how do you think they can contribute to those changes? Let's start with Anna.
Well, what I would like to see is equality, general equality, and I think that it will happen not only in gender gap, because as I said, I think that this is an opportunity to put more order in companies, and I think we will use it, and it will happen. There will be more order. I really want that, and I really feel that, because it's an attraction element. And if you want, it's like now with, for example, online job and remote jobs. It's like now it's a must. You cannot attract, for example, young people if you say that don't have an online policy. So with this transparency, this order, this will be an attraction element too. And I think that we will go there. I want to be there, and I think that we will go there. And and help these compensation managers all over the companies.
Oana?
Well, I'm going to be very direct this time, strangely. I just want to see changed that all companies are having a grading system and a comp and band policy, which is not only written nicely in a PowerPoint or Word document kept under key, but is explained to all the managers in that company and explained to all the people in that company, so that when an intern who worked in a company, you pick one, and he worked for 1 month or 1 month and a half during his summer vacation, and he goes back to his friends and says, oh my God, I worked this summer in that company, and you know what, they paid me this much because I was on grade 7, and they had this salary grid, and on grade 7 the salary is between this and that, and I was paid here, and I could according to my performance evaluation I could go to up to here, and then my career path was this. So this is what a simple wish that I have.
Bentia?
My wish probably is similar to Juana's one. I think the whole gender pay discussion in many organizations will hopefully lead to a more professional compensation management in general, not only with a focus on gender pay, but there are many companies who do not have job evaluation, who never thought about their pay bands, who do not have any structures, any processes, any guidelines, no transparency, and we do not need to start with pay transparency. We can have transparent processes first. And there's so much work to do and so much room for improvement beyond gender pay. And this will then in return enable gender pay again, like it's an upward cycle.
Bill, I'm going to let you put your gradar cap on if you want to do a bit of.
Well, I'm going to
Trumpet
take
blowing.
my daddy cap because I'm fathering 3 children, and there's my little baby girl, 1 year old, and my oldest girl, she's 11 years old. And it's not going to be that long that my oldest one will enter the labor market. And the thing is, I don't want to see her in a position where she will be paid less just because she didn't negotiate well enough, or she wasn't asking for a raise, or she wasn't asking for the promotion.
This doesn't happen at entry level, just at the higher levels.
Okay, exactly. The next year then. so
after parental leave.
Personality influences a lot on salaries. Sorry, that's another meeting.
But it's about professionalization. Yeah, and just as we've seen employer branding and recruiting or talent acquisition being professionalized over the years by introducing applicant tracking systems and other tools, I would like to see the same happening to compensation. Knowing well that most tools, most HRS out there are not up to the task yet, apart from SuccessFactors and the other large ones. But I really hope that this is going to change, and that the EU Pay Transparency Directive is not only going to be about compliance and reporting, but it's actually going to be about the introduction of policies, practices, and processes, so that we are actually going to see professionalization of compensation management across the board.
Great stuff. Thank you. So, like I said, we've also had some questions sent in from some of our followers on LinkedIn. So I'm just going to ask these questions, and whoever wants to shout up, shout up. I'm not going to come to each of you individually. So the first one is from Sumit Singla, who is a HR consultant in Delhi. Hello, Sumit. And they say, while communicating a pay range to an applicant, how do you guide them about pay ranges and range fitment? People may automatically assume that they are better suited to the top end of the range and may feel they are being treated unfairly when you fit them into a relevant quartile. So it's a 2-part question. Should recruiters or hiring managers even have to explain this? And what's the best way to get that point across? Oana, I said I wasn't going to come to anyone, but I saw you nodding away.
You just asked, do they have to explain? Yes, they do have to explain. Didn't you hear my wish with my magic wand? You know, everybody knows and understands. So somebody has to explain, and we have to explain. So yeah, it has to be explained. And what I would do is to clearly show from the requirements and of the job that we're talking about, and also how the range from minimum to maximum with a midpoint, how they are allocated, let's say, in the organization. What is the policy? What is the logic? Why am I offering you an amount which is between the minimum of the range and the midpoint, and I'm not offering you, or I'm offering you the higher end, and so on. So yeah, I would make sure that all these are clearly defined in the organization. And then I would explain them over and over to all candidates I ever meet.
Right. Anna?
I would like to add to Oana that we many times talk about career paths from one job to another and promotions, but we never talk, well, we do, but managers don't talk about let's say professional paths within the job, and that's what Oana was talking about, I think, and defining what's the professional path within the job, what's the salary path within the job, and where are you placed. And there, you are placed here. And recruiters should be able to transmit this from the beginning to where are you placed in that professional path within this job, because it's part of salary management too. So I think we had to help also companies to define that salary path within jobs.
Phil or Benti, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I love what you all said, and I think it's not an easy task because at the end it's again a performance appraisal and all the nuances. It's not objective. I mean, we cannot objectively measure performance in most of the jobs, and you have maybe 2 times 45 minutes with a candidate, and it's super hard to after 90 minutes say, okay, I place you at the middle, high end, or low end of a salary range compared to all your new peers. And I'm very sure that I'm taking the right decision because it's difficult. And then, of course, the man will negotiate more and the women less. And we are also humans. We can also be biased. So not an easy task.
It's difficult.
Absolutely. And there are some criteria that we can use. It's qualification, it's experience, it's proficiency shown, which is very hard to measure or to observe when we hire someone from the outside. And it's really then about the level that someone works on at some point. So does someone really become an expert in their role? And this doesn't always correlate with the years of experience or with the job tenure, because you can do things wrongly for many years too.
Yeah, tenure is a very German concept. It's very like collective bargaining agreements driven. Like after 10 years, like you're in the highest salary range of your grade, and it's fair if you're older, you earn more, but we can question that.
Absolutely.
Great.
Next panel discussion, but
we'll arrange another. Sumit, hopefully you found that useful. Piotr Setlak from our friends of Setlak and Setlak in Poland has asked, of course, the gender pay gap is a problem we should try to solve, but what about unequal retirement age for men and women? Anyone got any thoughts on that?
Equal retirement age. I think, well, in Spain, they are not talking about this. It's not an issue, the retirement age at all.
I think the justification for having unequal cutoff age for retirement in some countries is that, hey, men work in more blue-collar jobs. So they, it's more demanding on their bodies and on physical strength and so on. So it's going to tire them out earlier. Or they might be drinking more in some countries than others and, dying earlier. So the thing is, it's interesting. So,
Oana, I know you want to say something.
No, I'm just laughing, but it's a very interesting question. It's a very fair question. On the other hand, I think I personally need more time to do my homeworks in terms of what's behind the legal the laws that say that retirement age for men is higher than the one for women. Probably it has to do with life expectancy and a lot of other statistics that I'm not prepared with right now. But it's a very interesting question, and yeah, maybe we do a follow-up.
Okay, Piotr, we're going to send you an email with that answer at some point. Okay,
but I
useful.
believe it's connected to the whole issue we discuss, at least in Germany a lot, is poverty in old age. So women who are nurses, for example, won't be able to work until 67, which is currently our retirement age, whereas an engineer with their office job is more likely able to retire at retirement age. And that, amongst other factors, explains why especially women are so many times struggling to get along with their pension.
And this is a very good point, Wentia. So everybody can see this is not scripted. So we make things up as we go. I was once working at a fashion company. And you can tell I'm quite the fashionista. And the thing is, I did an analysis and I calculated that every single woman, and it was 95% women in the stores, will fall under the poverty line once they go into retirement. So they will have worked for decades, but state-based pension will not be enough to put them above this line. So they will have a very hard time paying for rent themselves, or having enough time to afford anything really beyond the most basics. And at the same time, the problem is because those are kind of low-income jobs. It's not minimum wage, but it's not that much more. They don't really have enough money today to invest into some kind of private pension. So it kind of becomes the responsibility of some employers to actually pay into private pension programs too, so that people can do those jobs today and will also be able to live off of their pension in the future.
Okay.
And Oana, I know you've got to run, right?
Mm-hmm. Do you have to leave us, Oana?
Yes, I do. I don't want
That's fine.
The discussion is very interesting, but
We've just got a couple more to come, so feel free, and we'll see you at the next one. Thank you so much for your time.
Looking forward. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Cool. So we've only got a few questions left actually, and Sam Reeve, who's one of our friends from Comp Team, is trying to bamboozle us with statistics here. So listen carefully. Men dominate high-paying tech jobs, with women only holding 24% of computing roles. Female STEM graduates constitute 19% and exit tech 45% more often than men. With only 11% of engineers being female, recruiting yields more male candidates. So the question is, how can we boost female participation in these higher paying roles? Who wants to kick us off?
Education, families, school, everywhere.
Oh.
What they see, what we value, what we publish. Today I saw on Instagram. One of the things that appeared there, it was, hey, let's celebrate what these people did, and they were all scientists. There were only 2 women in a group of maybe 10, but they are young scientists that have discovered new ways to fight against cancer. And it was surprising on Instagram. And I think that we have to talk more about these things. Even, I don't know, I have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and say, look, these are scientists that got this, and engineers, and at least from mother point of view, that's what we try. From a company point of view, talking about this and addressing this is a way that helps. But this educational bias that we have, and we say, I think that it's even more significant in Spain because of one reason, and it's about Spanish language, because English doesn't differentiate if you are saying it's a boy or a girl. It's tall, it's a person who is tall, and that's all. In Spanish, when we use adjectives, we say if it's a boy or a girl. It's alto, it's a boy. It's alta, it's a girl. So that things with language is something that also in Spain we're trying to work on, because it's part of the story and the words that you use when you talk about that there are engineers that are women, and you use both adjectives to talk about engineers as a general concept, and sometimes it's hard but from the family, from schools, from in an educational level, I think it's very, very important to solve this.
Bill, Bentia, anything to add? I think that was a pretty good answer.
I think it closes a bit the discussion and goes back to the starting point, because it's about equal opportunities. So why do women not pursue a career in higher graded tech jobs? And probably it's because they see that it will be hard to combine their family, and maybe it's not, I mean, work-life balance is not only related to families. There are also other people without children who want to have a work-life balance. And probably it's about these classical stereotypes and biases that if you're a woman in tech and you're pushy and you're not self-confident. That's the main difference. As a man, you're self-confident and say, hey, yeah, that's what we want. We want a head of department that is self-confident and who is a hard negotiator. I'm a blonde woman in a compensation job, and probably many times my life would be easier if I was a man.
Yep.
It's a shame. That would have been a perfect place to end the discussion, a perfect bookend, but we've still got 2 questions. So Artem Bajinov, HR and rewards expert, and we did kind of touch on this earlier, so let's not, I'm going to come to you for this, Phil, because this is really your wheelhouse and we don't need to spend too long on it. How can we use job evaluation factors to officially justify gender pay gaps of more than 5%?
Yeah, it's so it's the thing about the adjusted and the unadjusted gender pay gap. So we have the unadjusted gender pay gap, where we learn, okay, something about equal or equal opportunity in a firm. And then we have the adjusted gender pay gap, where we are looking, or we are getting an idea whether differences in pay are justified by objective factors, just like the EU is asking us to do. And the first line of defense is the grade of a job. And we see that with every organization, the pay gap or the gender pay gap almost disappears once you take into account the grade, unless it's an organization where there's an actual discrimination going on. And then when you take into account the job family, which is the next objective factor, then it even becomes smaller than it was before, because there will be a slight difference between marketing and tech jobs and HR and sales jobs, etc. So it's not just about the grading, but it's about bringing your house in order, bringing order to chaos, and introducing some kind of job architecture so that you can start managing jobs. And I know the concept of having a job is hard to grasp for some, because it's not something that is that popular in many organizations, but it's the way forward to professionalize HR. And it doesn't only have an effect on the pay gap reporting and analysis, but it will also make your life easier when it comes to recruiting, performance management, promotion, and talent management in general. It's not just about the people, but it's also about delivering structure-based work in HR.
And I think that will link nicely to the last question, which, funnily enough, was from Bentia. And Bentia asked, how do you convince a line manager to pay more than a candidate asks for, whether it's a female or a male, probably in this case, female? How do you know if the candidate is really less skilled or if it's an unconscious bias? So I'm not going to put Bentia on the spot to answer her own question. I'm going to come to you, Anna, if you have any thoughts on this.
Well, and it has to do with what we said before. It's very difficult for you, for Benji, to take that. To be sure, completely sure of that. I think that we could help managers and then convince them and make them part of our team if we had this salary path or this professional path within the jobs, and what do you expect of these candidates, and where is the candidate placed? So what would be according to the level, to the job family, as Philip said, to all the variables, where should be the candidate, the offering of salary. But it's not easy. But I think that I want to be fair with managers also, because they are difficult to manage many things, many times. But it's also because they don't have information, and they don't know about this. They know about logistics, about production, about sales, but not about compensation. And many times HRBPs don't have also all the knowledge needed about compensation. So I think that there's a huge task of pedagogy in the companies, with managers, with HRBPs, with HR itself, and with high managers too. And I think that's the only way to help Benji with these situations.
Because what I experience is that what Joanna said, like candidates are pushy on the market and they say, what's the pay range? And then many times, we also consider to hire maybe a bit above our internal peers, and then managers have a budget responsibility and they're so happy if they find someone asking less, and then they can compensate for the others they hired at the higher end of the pay range. And then it's more because it's not economic. It's not economic on a liberal market to pay more than you have to. And you really need to convince people.
I think that's a very good point also to the budget, managing the budget. In Spain, it's surprising for me. I don't know in Germany or Romania or in UK, but managers don't feel in general responsible for their salary budget. Okay, and that's weird, because then you have to manage these situations, and the candidate is asking for less or is asking for more, and you have to be realistic about that. What happens with many managers here in Spain is that, given that they don't have this salary budget responsibility, they don't talk even about this. They just say, no, I prefer this one, or I prefer the other one. And anyway, although it's hard, I think it's good. They talk with you about salary budget, and if I have less or more budget for the candidates, and for promotions, and for annual salary rises.
I think we're going to wrap things up there. Phil, I'm just going to give you the last word. If you want to have any final comments around equal pay or gradar in general, now's your chance.
Yeah, it can all be fixed. That's the thing. It's not magic. And if you professionalize things, if you start working with structures and processes and tools, things will get better. But we need the commitment from top management, and we also need the commitment from middle management and entry-level management to manage pay fairly. And that means adhering to the structures and rules set out by HR. So it kind of becomes a compliance topic. And it's not all about reporting compliance to the outside, but it's also about being compliant on the inside, because there are rules and there's the commitment from the firm to equal pay. And this is what becomes more important. And I guess this is also relevant to what was said before. Employees and candidates will start asking for these things. And if an organization can't show anything like that, they will not get the most talented candidates anymore.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for your time. I think that was really insightful and hopefully entertaining. To everyone who's watched, we really hope you enjoyed the conversation, and we hope you've taken away some new thoughts and ideas around equal pay. We will definitely be doing more of these, hopefully a live version where people can join and ask questions in the chat. So that's something to look out for in the future. But for now, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.